And this is just audio, right? So it doesn't matter if I look stupid.
Well, the radio is just audio, and then the webcam thing is video, but it's like a separate thing. It's on our Facebook,
Oh, okay. That's cool.
YouTube, Twitch, and all that, but it's not like it's more of a podcast, I would say,
Right.
than anything else. But yeah, don't worry about looking stupid. I will probably do more than enough of that for both of us. So
we'll get it done together as a team.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, after this James Brown tune, we're going to get into some Love Sexy Prince and then some Sly and the Family Stone. And then I figured we'll do, by that time, it'll be top of the hour. So local calendar. And then I figured we'll give California Sober a spin.
Oh, thank you.
And then I guess my main thing is I try to come in with like a few pre-prepared questions, but I also don't want to give away trade secrets too much. Like, when is the album coming out? I don't want to like
about 8 weeks.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Don't worry. I don't think you need to worry about trade secrets with me because I'm not really an artist. This is a COVID record I did because I was bored and I had time. And the songs on here are like it's like the Island of Misfit Toys. They're just songs I wrote that I knew I wasn't going to be able to get another artist to cut. And so I don't play live or anything like that. So we don't have to be precious about that.
Sure. Well, I guess it's like funny that you say that, of just like, even when like working artists get to the point where that is all they call themselves, is like a working artist, not much art gets made. I feel like at that point you kind of have to get into that like Andy Warhol world of like, you're more of like conscious of the branding as much as the like work itself. And a lot of times when you're making this stuff, it's a lot of, well, things like this.
Yeah. I'm my own worst client. I much prefer making a record for somebody else at this point in time. Partly because I'm old. I've done this a long time.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of my own records. I've said probably, most people say, I've said everything I have to say. I think I've said more than I have to say. So, but it was COVID and I had time to do it and I was bored and I had these songs that nothing else was going to happen with. So
Right. Yeah. And it might as well like find the right time to put it out. I mean, you work with a lot of folks too. I mean, like it's like, because currently I saw you're working with Chris Koza.
Just finishing that record today.
Yeah.
I just mixed it. I didn't produce it.
Okay, so you didn't like engineer or anything?
No. He just brought it in for me to mix, and we did a lot of that even together.
How often does that happen? Because like, you don't only just produce, like you will like co-write too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how often does someone just come in and be like, hey, can you just mix this? Like, do you get hit up for like engineering, production, like, mouse, or is it like, hey, can you just like throw something on this?
I'll tell you, when it does happen, it's a happy day because mixing is a blast, especially mixing. To me, this might sound weird, but if I didn't produce it and I didn't record it, it's even funner to mix because it feels like you're getting all up in somebody else's business. See what I mean? And
what do you mean by
pure.
that? Like, do you mean like sifting through someone's dirty laundry, or like
Totally.
you get to see their process?
Totally. And just it's a kind of a like it's a voyage of discovery. When I'm mixing a record that I engineered, I already know everything that's there. It's not going to be like there's any surprises. But when in this Koza record, it's like, oh, the Laurel strings are in this song, and just all kinds of. Jillian Ray played a cool violin arrangement on this, and it's amazing.
So like, how often do you get to? Like, what are the notes you get on a thing like this? Like, do you find yourself pulling things out that like even Chris is going like, well, whoa, that's like a Where'd you find that? We kind of decided to put that in the background.
Right.
Or are you more on the same page with this kind of thing?
Well, that's something that you find out retroactively on this record. It also depends on the artist and their level of confidence and experience, because like a new artist often will want to, especially if there's someone who has a laptop with some recording software on it and they're
Right.
do some engineering themselves, then they're going to go in there oftentimes and want to control the mix because
Yeah.
well, it's like in Minnesota, when you drive on a patch of black ice, what's the worst thing you can do? Slam on the brakes, but you have
Yeah.
almost a physical need in your body takes over to control. Things are out of control. I
Hold
better
on.
control.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the worst thing to do. And I think sometimes with young artists, they're very controlling about the mix, and they basically want to use their rough mix but sound
yeah.
better, which is fine
Yeah.
because then you know what you're going for. But with Koza, he's very experienced, he's very confident, and he was like, let's see what happens, do whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then he went for it. We went for it, and I went crazy on some of the mixes, doing kind of adding in Eno things and reversing signals and adding weird
Right.
delays and things like that. And the more I did it, the more he liked it. So it was great.
There you go. There you
But not
go.
always the case. That's not always the case. It really depends on the artist, and it really, I think with my job, the only way to do my job is if you remain really, really humble, in the sense that
Right.
it's not my record. Success to me is defined as when the artist is happier and they love it more than they ever thought they could.
Right. When the concept itself is like executed.
Yeah, but it's not my record. It's making
Yeah.
them happy is the goal. And it's not that I don't have any ego wrapped up in it. I do, but my ego is wrapped up in how happy can I make them, not
Right.
how can I
Right.
transform this into a record that just, really sounds like me. That's stupid.
So where does that line get drawn when you're working on your own work? Is this do you even mix your own work, or do you ship it off to someone else for this purpose?
No, I did everything on this record. I've mixed my own records ever since I started mixing.
Yeah.
But this record, I also played almost all the bass, and I did all the guitars because it was COVID, so the only people you
Right.
could work with were people who have studios,
Yeah.
so I didn't do any of the drums because I really don't play drums. I can program drums, but I can't even fake play drums. I can
Yeah.
fake play piano and things like that. So I did a lot of, those kind of things on this record. But now I forgot that. What was the question?
Mixing your own records, like where, because I almost think it's easier when you're working on other people's stuff, or at least for me, like there's like this weird like reverence I'm giving it, where it's just like, oh, like I'm gonna do a good
Gets too
job.
precious.
But yeah, and then but for
Yeah.
my stuff, I almost feel like it becomes like that project, almost like your dad is working on in the garage, where
Yeah, right.
it's just like, no, I'm rebuilding the engine. I'm gonna get around to like it's like I know what this needs, and then as soon as you take it apart, you're like, oh well, if I do that, I gotta shimmy this whole thing
Yeah,
down.
right. I think with this record, because of the kind of music it is, it's a lot more organic than a lot of the
Yeah.
music I do for other artists, because a lot of the stuff on this is like, it's guitar, bass, drums, maybe some keys,
Mhm.
vocals. It's pretty straight ahead. So I didn't I would have loved to have somebody else mix it because it would be fun to
Right.
hear what they did. And I'm sure it's not that tough of a record to mix, let's put it that way.
Sure.
And the
Sure.
way I recorded it, I was mixing as I went. You know what I
Right.
mean? It'd be
Right.
different if it's a pop thing or an electronic thing or something like that. There's so many different ways you can go in the mixing, but mixing a
Yeah.
rock record is like, I don't know, does the snare bang?
Yeah.
Are the balances right? It's not like there's a whole lot of esoteric mixing techniques on this record because the music isn't suited for that, you know?
There's the basic ingredients need to be there, and you need to be able to interact with them in the dish.
Yeah. Can I understand the lyric? Can I hear the vocal? But just it's more about balances and EQs and compression than anything else, rather than any kind of like super weird stuff. Like I didn't get to do any of the weird stuff on my record that I got to do on Koza's record, except for on there's one song called "Be Who You Are," that was
Sure.
very kind of when I was really young, like 6, and Sergeant Pepper came out,
Yeah.
6 or 7. I really fell in love with Within You Without You. I was obsessed. I'm still obsessed with that song. And this song is kind of like that kind of like white guy who's into East Indian music. And that I got to get weird with on that song, but a lot of the rest of it is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. So basically, what's going to happen is there might be some questions I reiterate, just because when we go on the radio, it's kind of a different audience. There are people who only listen to this show on the radio. There are
Cool.
also people who only watch these chats. So if we're going and there is something I kind of ask you about and it gets a little redundant, that is why. Reason I bring that up is there is about 70 seconds left on this track, and that's just going to be kind of the point where once we're on, I'm kind of shift perspective, and I'm basically just going to be reading a list, and then I'm just going to like kind of pull you in, and just trying not to I don't know, put you in any gotcha situations, I guess.
No, I want you to bring it on. I've got a
The
million of these.
hard-nosed
I
journalism.
am very hard to rattle. Look at I play guitar for Paul Westerberg, so bring it on, man.
Woo!
It's
Well, I
very
mean,
hard to rattle me.
might ask you a few stories about that, but we'll get to that later. But yes,
Cool.
30 seconds. Just gonna read a calendar, and then we'll talk about this new single, and then we'll go from there once we get on the air here. So stand by. We're gonna be live in 15. So I'm just gonna put the cans on and kind of do the thing here.
All right. Thank you.
Sly and the Family Stone off of There's a Riot Going On. We also had some Prince off of Love Sexy Dance On and The Payback, James Brown. You can't really go wrong with James Brown. So if you're just tuning in here at KFAI, it is a somewhat snowy for now. I think we're in the eye of the storm. But if you're listening after the fact, yes, this is Desert Islands, the show where I make mixtapes based on my guests. 10 records they would bring to a desert island today. I'm making one for Kevin Bowe, and we've been listening to his Desert Island picks. But here are some things you can listen to this weekend and beyond from a live standpoint. Now, here is the thing. A lot of tonight's shows have been canceled. Some have been postponed. So the Flamin' O's tonight, that is postponed. We're going to keep you updated on whenever that date gets moved. But tomorrow night, as far as I know, Freeze Pop Records Showcase featuring Sim 1, Alonda Nocturna, Shading the Sun, Bird Cop, Ice Climber, and Maida. That's at the Hook and Ladder. As far as I know, that is still on. Who knows, though? It could be a weird 48 hours coming up, folks. Thomas Bond and Ali McIntosh at the Dakota is also tomorrow. The Heavy Sixers, Valors, I'm going to be opening that show. Maybe at Mort's. You'll find out a little bit more. Let's finish the calendar this weekend and see some shows that might actually happen due to the snow. Friday, Artificial Flowers featuring Shuggy, Andrew Jensen at Cadence Records. This show starts at 7 p.m. Druzy Rose, Grant Glad, Beneath Green, and Full Catholic at the Turf Club at 7:30 p.m. And then at 10 p.m. that night, Flower Stalks, Wish Wash, and Serious Machine at the 331 Club. Saturday, Viagra Boys. The Steens are going to be open this show at First Avenue. And Saturday is also going to have, there's some good shows on Saturday. Gabe Barnett and them Rounders, Asia Minor, Lamar at Underground Music Cafe, and then Mark Mallman and Cult Vibes at Ice House. That's all on Saturday. Also on Sunday, Tragic Hands, Porcupine, and Low Key's Folly. I believe this is their release show. So Loki's Folly, good local group right there. Looking ahead, Otakope Beaver. I definitely butchered that, but Scrunchies are opening that show, and that is this Tuesday. And speaking of Tuesdays, Taylor James Donsky. We talked to him at the beginning of the month. He is hosting every Tuesday at the 331, and that Tuesday is going to be no exception. I believe that's the last one you can catch him at. So, think I missed something, or you just want to hear me mispronounce your band name on the air, email it to desertislandskfai@gmail.com. That is desertislandskfai@gmail.com. All one word. I curate all that entire segment from the things you send me, so keep sending me things. Speaking of things that we are actually, the reason we're doing the show is because we're talking with Kevin Bowe right now. Kevin, can you still hear me? Are you still
I
still
can.
with us? Perfect.
Crystal.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for joining me. I know, I guess the vid chat actually kind of we're ahead of the game as far as weather-wise. But thanks for joining me just time-wise, just because I know you are a busy cat. Not only do you have a record coming out, and you modestly put it as a COVID record, but it's still, labor's a lover, still labor, and you're still working on this. But not only that, you're kind of mixing other records in town. You're doing a lot on the side as well. So before we get into California Sober here, let's talk about this record. So you said you played most of the instruments on this record yourself?
Yeah, in that sense, it really was a COVID record, because at that point it was during the time when, the only people I could work with are people who had their own studios. I couldn't have people in my studio to work. So Noah Levy, lucky for Noah, lucky for
Noah's
me.
great.
Yeah, he's great. And we've worked together since time began. Anyway, I've known him since he was 14. And he had just before COVID, he had just finished building a beautiful studio above his garage in St. Paul. And so he was able to do a bunch of the drum tracks, which worked out fantastic. And then my regular drummer, Peter Anderson, did everything else after it, it lifted to the point where you could have someone over masked and all that. So
right.
Between the two of them, we were all set.
So I guess one of the things we were talking about off mic is when you've produced records, when you've written songs that have ended up on other people's records, and just like co-written songs with artists for their own records. When it comes to making your own records, for me, I always play that hard game of where do you draw the line. But for this one, where did you draw the line, especially when you're playing a lot of the instruments yourself? Did you already have the arrangements for these songs, or were there a few tracks where it's just it'd be cool, another guitar track on this and another guitar track on this? You know what? Why don't we just have a wall? Was the temptation there on this record, or did you just kind of have these tunes already kind of kicking around, and
all the tunes were kicking around? Like the album, I think of it as the Island of Misfit Toys. These are songs that I had written over a long period, that I knew nothing was ever going to happen with them unless I recorded them, because they weren't the kind of song that another artist was going to record. And so I had the arrangements pretty well in my head, but some of them I let myself get weird on. But most of the record is pretty straightforward. Well, here, there is one for all you people in visual land.
Hey.
So if I go through the songs, that first single, California Sober, that's super early 2000s, pop rock, guitar band thing. So, how weird can you get? There's a little weird stuff on there. Like I did a guitar solo and then I exported it as MIDI and used it to trigger a Moog synthesizer to double the solo. That was cool.
Sure.
Putting Me Out of Your Misery is kind of me imitating the Psychedelic Furs. So there's not a whole lot of, there's some cool synths and stuff like that on there. But again, it's, compared to how, if you turn on the pop radio right now, it's pretty straightforward compared to that. Only Child is me imitating Tom Petty. I Hate Falling in Love is me imitating Harry Nilsson. No room for wiggle there. Half Past Never, me imitating the Replacements. If I Was You, me imitating the Who. Not As Pretty As You Think You Are, me imitating the New York Dolls and Mott the Hoople. Be Who You Are is me imitating Within You Without You off of Sgt. Pepper. Hurt Me Beautiful is back to that early 2000s, like Jimmy Eat World stuff. And then the last one is just an acoustic guitar vocal thing. So like you can tell there's not a, it's not like I didn't have a lot of opportunity to get super weird with the production.
Sure. Yeah. Well, why don't we listen to California Sober? This came out in January. This record will be out in 8 weeks, you said?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
All right. Well, here is California Sober by Kevin Bowe and the Okemah Prophets here on Desert Islands. Woo. Yeah, it's I guess one of the things I've always wondered is especially with people in your position where you kind of got a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah.
From a songwriting perspective, what do you think informs you more? Do you think the producer hat has come in to play the more records you produce, or do you think the songwriter kind of informs your production tools?
That one.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, because I was a songwriter without being an engineer or a producer for many years. Because back in the 90s, you could make a living as a songwriter, because everyone was buying CDs. So the money was sick. Then right around, but I started making my own demos of my songs to try and seduce artists into cutting them. You have to have a demo that it doesn't have to be hi-fi, but it needed to be like at least interesting.
Yeah.
And I was making these demos, and I remember Johnny Lang was doing his second album, and I had done this really cool demo using really crappy equipment, like an Alesis HR16 drum machine, and a Fostex 8-track digital recorder, which is just a horrible sounding early digital technology, just awful. But we did this. I had an Alesis Quadraverb, and I used some weird time delays, and we made this demo, me and Johnny, for this song, and it sounded really cool. And I went to the studio, and David Z is producing, and Steve Cropper is on guitar.
Nice.
Yes. And Richie Hayward from Little Feat is on drums.
Whoa.
All these like great players. And David Z's like, hey, Kevin, play him that demo. So we listened to that demo, and it ends, and I was like nervous, And Steve Cropper stood up and said, well, let's do it, but we're never going to beat that demo. And that's when I thought two things. Number one, I thought, Steve Cropper, you are my new boyfriend. And,
yeah.
And I also thought maybe I could do this, producer thing. So then I started producing, and for years I produced, but I didn't do my own engineering. And then as Pro Tools got better and I got better at using it, then I fell in love with engineering, and it all came together. But I will always be a songwriter first.
Yeah. Well, it's wild how you talk about like there is like that weird, like almost getting into the pool for the first time on like the first day of summer. Like as a songwriter, even after like cutting a few records, there is like this weird thing, almost like some sort of schoolmarm told you that you couldn't. And it's just like, oh, well, I can't cut that because
that's exactly what I did. I told myself, my inner tape was like, those people are unicorns.
Yeah.
You are a horse.
Yes.
And
then and I can do a lot of things.
Battle is stopping doing that.
Yeah.
You have to stop doing that, because part of the reason I couldn't engineer and produce and mix is because I told myself I couldn't. I told myself I was too stupid. Thanks, Dad. But when Steve Cropper said that, it really kind of lit me up.
Yeah.
And then I started doing it, and surrounding myself with people who were better than me at doing it, and learning from them.
Yeah. So I guess like when did you start surrounding yourself with, because you have worked with not only a diverse cast of characters, a very impressive cast of characters. I mean, like you have co-writes with everyone from, Cats from the Replacements to like Etta James.
Yeah.
So how do you find yourself surrounded with these people? Like, I mean, like Westerberg, like obviously we're all in the mincestral pool. Eventually everyone just kind of all gets to know each other. But like, how did you find yourself? Like how do you get to the path from Replacements to Etta James?
Well, don't run your career like the Replacements did would be lesson number one. I mean, I grew up, the first punk rock band I was in the,
Yeah.
starting in like 1980, 81 really, we would like open for the Replacements and stuff like that. So we kind of
Yeah.
grew up musically together. So I was
Of
pals,
course.
but then,
Yeah.
they took off and I didn't. So I think the first thing, if you want to do what I do and produce and write and mix for other artists, make sure that your own artistic career is a complete failure. And that will motivate you. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
only half kidding. Actually, I don't think I'm kidding at all. If you hang in there and do good work, then
Yeah.
this myth that like, oh, it's so hard to get your lucky break. Everyone gets a lucky break
Yeah.
at some
That's
point
true.
in their lives. You just might have to wait a long time, but everyone gets a lucky break. Most people
Yeah.
are not paying attention.
No.
They're not paying attention when they get their lucky break. But luckily for me, I was doing a gig, an opening gig as usual, and I was like 30 or pushing it.
Yeah.
And things, weren't working out for me. I wasn't anywhere close to making a living in music. And a producer, David Z, was in the audience, and he pulled me out.
Yeah.
He pulled me off the stage, and said, you're not very good, but your songs are. And if you were writing them for someone more talented than you could make some real money. And that was the start of it. He took one of my songs and put it on Kenny Wayne Shepherd's first album, and it went platinum. And I was like,
Whoa.
oh, this is how this works.
So was that Ledbetter Heights?
Mm-hmm.
And so like writing, do you get to actually collaborate with the artists, or is it more like, hey, I have this song, and then they're just pretty much like, all right, that artist gets to cut this, and you're completely removed?
Back then, artists were more willing to use outside material that they didn't co-write. Now, because revenues are so far down, because obviously Spotify pays much less than iTunes, and iTunes paid much less than buying CDs. So nowadays it's extremely difficult to ever get a song cut, and very rare. Even in Nashville, where they used to do that all the time. Like the artists want to, and rightfully so, business wise, I get it, or co-write their own stuff. Plus, every artist wants to project the image of them being self-sufficient on their writing, even if they're not.
Like that's a huge marketing, especially in Nashville right now. Is just like it's like you don't want to be seen as the artist that doesn't write their own stuff.
And that was never a thing in Nashville before. I mean, look at artists that didn't write their own material. Frank Sinatra and Elvis.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to hold them back.
Yeah. It seemed like they did all right.
They did all right. So I think it's silly, because I mean, just being as good of a singer as Elvis, isn't that enough?
Right.
Isn't that enough? It's enough for me. Admittedly, I'm biased, because if Elvis was still big, I would want to write songs for him. But I think now, because they want some of the money, and which I understand, because there's less money to be had, and because of the image thing. But not that I mind co-writing with artists. I mean, I do it all the time, and I really like it.
Yeah, and then I mean the image thing comes into play always. No matter who you're writing for. Like I think it was Jay Retard who said, like, if Roy Orbison had a face like Elvis, we wouldn't have heard of Elvis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. If MTV was around in Roy Orbison days, we never would have heard of Roy Orbison, which I think would be a very sad loss for us all.
Oh yeah. I mean, like that guy was like those like old vaudevillian tropes of just like, I nail it on the first take every time. It's just like that guy was probably as close to that as you could get.
It's funny, even with newscasters, everyone just has to be so pretty now that we're such a visual society. Walter Cronkite probably wouldn't get a gig now. You know what I mean? Because look at even the people on the news. There is no reason for the people who are reading the news to me to look like models, but these days most of them do.
They do. And it's I mean, like that's kind of how like a lot of things are kind of, well, that is an industry way worse than ours, and ours isn't great.
Mine actually is great in that, like, nobody seems to care. You know what I mean? That I'm old and and whatever, silly looking for what I do. Although I do notice that a lot of the young producers also look like models. Thank God I'm not bitterly jealous of them, because that would be a problem.
that could be a whole thing. Well, I mean that's like kind of like that whole James Murphy thing of like on Losing My Edge, where it's just like he has that whole verse of just like he's just like, yeah, man, I'm losing my edge, but I was like this guy at all the shows. Like I was showing these records to these kids, and now I'm being replaced by these, you know, people who are better looking and people with more talent and people who are actually really, really nice. If we're, you know, like, I love that, like that whole thing of just like, I'm not bitter about it, but then I can't be, because they're actually they're actually really nice people, and I'm trying to resent them, and you know.
Yeah, I got nothing to be bitter about now, that's for sure. Because I mean, as long as I'm working, I'm happy. That's
Yes,
work makes me happy, and I'm booked solid. I'm crazy busy right now, working
that's
on
a
a bunch
good
of
thing.
yeah, super cool things. I'm probably producing 6 records at the same time right now.
Whoa. Okay. Well,
You know,
let's put a pin on that, because we're about to go back on the air here. Brand new Loki's Folly, Beaches and Peaches. We also heard a new track from Leslie Rich and the Rocket Soul Choir, Revolt, and Kevin Bowe and the Okemah Prophets, California Sober. So we're going to get back to your Desert Islands picks list in a second here. But let's actually talk to you about that, because I feel like you are a person that has actually kind of like collaborated with people who have been on like Desert Island picks list on this show. So where does this start for you? You know, like, was there, because obviously there are a lot of artists that, you know, inspired me to fall in love with music, but you know, there's a lot of artists that kind of made me think, as we were talking about, oh, there's no way I could do that. You
yeah.
know, you've
Like listening to
collaborated.
Jimi Hendrix is almost alienating, because you
Right,
know that like
right.
he's not from here.
So is there an artist on this list that inspired you to like actually pick up the axe and go like, well, I not only I think I can do this, I probably should be doing this.
Well, the band, the reason I started playing guitar was because of the Who. So
Yeah,
in the early mid 70s, I'm in school, I'm small for my age, I hate sports, and I'm bad at
yeah.
sports. And uh, I saw pictures of Pete Townsend, and I saw that no, he does not look like a model.
Right,
He's got a
right.
nose the size of Kansas. And I thought, but I bet you this guy is surrounded by adoring women and all the drugs he could possibly want, and it's because he plays this guitar. So
Yeah,
I'm going to do that. This is 13, 14-year-old logic. And so they had come out with a few years before the Live at Leeds album, which is a perfect album to learn how to play guitar to, because first it had one of those super dumb early stereo mixes. So the drums are up the middle and the vocals are up the middle. The guitar is on the left channel and the bass is on the right channel. It's brilliant. So if you tune your Pioneer stereo receiver only to the left channel, number one, it's a live album, so there's no cheating. Number two, it's Pete Townsend, so he's a brilliant guitarist, but he's a simple, blocky guitar player. So it's something
yeah,
you can actually figure out how to play once you
yeah.
figure out what a bar chord is. And there's very little drums or anything else bass mucking it up. So I spent an entire summer just listening to the left side of Live at Leeds, and I saved up my money and bought a Les Paul, and that's it.
So was there a record that inspired you to take up the reins as a producer? Because I mean, like we can, going down the list, I mean, like James Brown, his career is responsible for like 10 genres
Yeah, yeah.
of music. But like, is there a record on this list that made you go like, oh, not because the more I learn about production, the more I kind of fall in love with music all over again. I
Yeah,
start listening to my own
it
records.
opens your mind.
Yes, yes, and you start hearing things that maybe your subconscious just kind of perceived as background radiation or just like textures, and now those things are kind of like coming up to the forefront of your palette.
Well,
So is there a record or
there's
records that
whole
kind of
genres
inspired
that
you?
did that with me. Like
Yeah.
I ignored disco when it was popular,
Oh
and
yeah.
now half of my shuffle on my computer and playlists and stuff are full of disco. Same with soft rock of the 70s. I ignored it when it
Oh
was
yeah.
around, because during the 70s I was like Led Zeppelin, blah blah blah, and now I'm all like Bread, uh,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Carpenters, things like that. So I don't think there was a record that inspired me for production, but I will say there was a big sea change at the end of the 70s. I had a few experiences of like someone playing me the first Ramones album, the first
Yeah.
Sex Pistols album, the first Clash album, and then I had a chance. I was at this. Oh, it's too long of a story, but I saw the Replacement's first gig ever,
Yeah.
and I remember being like confused because they were like the worst band I'd ever seen, bar none, not even close. But I still found it super compelling and I couldn't take my eyes
Yeah.
off. And so I remember going home and I was honestly confused, like wrestling with it in my mind, like, why do I like this so much? These guys are
Yeah.
horrible. And
Yeah.
then that's what got me into this totally different way of thinking about music, and kind of diving headfirst into punk rock
Right.
because of seeing the Replacements and hearing the first. I had the same reaction when I heard the first Sex Pistols record. I was like, why are these guys trying to play bad? Because I was so brainwashed into that, like, good music
Right.
is difficult to play. No,
Yes.
it isn't. It can
Yes.
be, but that's not what makes it good, you
Yeah. It
know?
doesn't need to be. Yeah.
No, it doesn't need to be. And so that was a real complete sea change, for me. But as far as learning to produce, it was more that I was involved in recording sessions because I had written the song
Yeah.
and they'd bring me in. And sometimes they'd have me play guitar because I wrote the song in an open tuning and they couldn't figure out how to
Right.
do it, whatever.
Right.
And watching the other people produce and stuff like that, I thought was really inspiring.
Yeah. It's almost, I don't want to say a lost art form because I feel like there's records that came out 3 months ago that are blowing my mind, you know, but like it is an instrument that can be played like anything else, production, using the studio
Yeah,
and using it like a, because it can do call and responses just like any other instrument in the song.
sure. And it's endlessly fascinating. The
Yeah,
gear, the techniques, the history, the current, the future, the whole thing. I find it's never boring. You could be working on
yeah,
the dumbest, most pointless record of all time, and you know it's not going anywhere. And I don't know if you like me waited tables for years and years and years, you're still really happy to be there.
yes, yes, of course, of course. And it's never done too. I think it's like the more I learn, the more I realize
Right?
I
It's
I don't
infinite.
know anything at all actually. And it that used to scare me of just like you kind of you almost like try to make yourself look bigger, more intimidating. Like, no, my chops are
Yeah,
fine, my chops are good.
right.
But like now, it's just more of like seeing someone that blows you out of the water. It's just like
Or
it's
even someone
exciting again. You're just like,
even
oh
someone who's just
man,
getting started, but they know this one thing.
yeah. And
You know what I mean?
they're super
They show
intuitive
you.
to it, and they're just doing it their way. There's just something electric to that, and
Yeah,
it kind of keeps me coming back every single
it's
time.
endlessly amusing. I mean, I take it at least a couple of days every year and just go around to other studios in town, and I'll say,
Yeah,
Jason at Terrarium, show me your newest mix. What are you doing? Show it
yeah.
to
What are
me.
you working on?
He's a great guy, and he'll do it. Same with working with. I don't have to go to John Fields to do it because we do records together, and often enough where I'm like, I'll just get Snoop all up in his business, and he does things differently, and
You're
he's a
already
great
saying
source of
too.
information. And
Yeah,
yeah, there's a bunch
terrarium's
of
a great
people in
spot.
town. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, speaking of just tuning in, if you are just tuning in, this is Desert Islands, the show where I make mixtapes based on my guests' 10 records they would bring to a desert island. Right now, I'm speaking with Kevin Bowe, and I made today's mixtape for Kevin Bowe. Up next, we're going to hear more from those desert island picks. We're also going to hear some local music by Double Grave, but we're first going to listen to this. I always forget about these underwriting carts, and
Better not do that.
so yeah, we got two of these, and then one more later in the show, which we can just do at the next talk break. But yeah, so thank you for bearing with me on that. I realized, oh, I have two of these that I need to play like 5 minutes ago, actually. But yeah, other than that, hold on, a couple seconds left on these things. Just want to make sure they are good. Good.
Well done.
Yeah. Other than that,
Here, can you see behind me if I get out of the way?
yeah. Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, so this is where you work at.
Yeah.
Out of. So where is this, like a undisclosed location, Fortress of Solitude type thing, or?
This is the basement of my house in Tangletown.
Oh, nice, nice. So how often is that your mixing room, or do you like actually track things there too?
Oh yeah, track the other room. There's a second room with full drums set up and mic'd, ready to go. I'm doing a Joyanne Parker's new record here, and they prefer to cut live, and I can do a whole 5 or 6 piece band all live at the same time, and they can each have their own cue mix.
No,
Yeah.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're working on a few different things right now. I saw that you were working with Chris Koza on social media, so there's that. But what else are you working on that you feel comfortable talking about? Because I
Oh, I
also
can
know.
talk about any of them. No,
Oh, great.
no government projects. So 2 days from now, I have a single coming out with one of my favorite singers in the world, Courtney Hadwin. She is
Okay.
she's 5 years ago when she was 13, she had a big viral moment where she sang that Otis Redding song that the Black Crowes made famous, Hard to Handle, on
Yes.
America's Got Talent. She was like a chalk skin, white, thin little British girl, 13
Yeah.
years old. And she busted it wide open like Janis Joplin or something. And it was amazing. And I hooked up with her a couple of years ago. And we started writing together. And she was locked up in management deals and stuff like that she's never released an original song. She's just been passed from management deal to management deal, and no one ever actually released any music. But now she's free. So we have 3 songs coming out. The first one is this Friday. I think they're amazing. I think she's amazing. And Courtney Hadwin is it. I mean, she is it. It's like working with Amy Winehouse or something. I mean, she is phenomenal.
That's
so
exciting.
That's one thing. Yeah, that's super exciting. And that's no one else is involved. I make the music, she sings it, we write them together, we own everything 50-50, totally indie, which is my favorite way to fly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even if we don't make any money, I don't even care. Then the Koza thing, I'm finishing the last mix tweaks today, new Chris Koza album.
Really exciting. Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful record.
He does nice work.
Yeah. And this one's really something. Then I'm a little over halfway through with the new Joyanne Parker record, which I don't know if you know her, but she's one of the few bands in the Midwest that like is actually making a living. They pack everywhere they play.
She's like one of those the Minnesota version of one of those like blues bands that never leaves Texas because they never have to. Like she works. Like she
works constantly.
Yeah.
But they're actually starting to do Europe. They just did Florida for the last.
Really?
She hasn't been in Florida for the last. I think she's gonna have trouble getting home now. So she's starting to branch out. But she does not just Minnesota, but the whole Midwest, and she's got devoted fans, which nobody goes out and sees music anymore. But they go out and see her. She also runs her own business. She's more indie and punk rock than most punk rockers I've ever worked with. So that's another one. There's another woman named Scarlett Wood, who's a solo person, but we're making some of the songs are like full band and everything. And what makes her interesting is she's a really good songwriter and a really good singer, but she's an amazing guitar player. And she plays, check this out, a 7-string nylon string guitar.
Oh,
did you even know that was a thing?
No. Now I want to get my hands on one. That sounds like really.
She's amazing at it. So that's another one. I'm just about to start a new Twins of Franklin record.
I went to college with them. They're really nice. Yeah.
Becky and Laura.
Becky, Laura. Yeah.
Where?
So I went to Augsburg before I dropped out. I went to 3 sad semesters there, and that's where they graduated. But that's where I met them. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't feel bad. I dropped out of the U of M to devote more time to my horrible punk rock band. And it ended up working out. But their band I'm just going to start here in a couple of weeks, I think. And let me see. I know there's more.
Oh yeah.
another roots band in town called the Mayflies. Then there's this band in Pittsburgh that I've been working with for the last 4 years. That is just a classic rock band. I've done 4 albums with them. The 4th one comes out later this year. They've been on tour opening for the Rolling Stones here and in Europe and ZZ Top. Ghost Hounds is the name of that band. And then some other like one-offs and things like that. But those have been, and then I'm always really busy doing music for film and TV as well.
It's literally that adage, like, it's nice work if you can get it. No, like, as long as you're working, it really is nice. Like it says, you are.
Yeah, it is. And I remember when I was like, I always say you spend the first half of your career looking for work, and then the second half looking for time to actually do all the work that you ended up getting. And it's a good problem to have. But I do my fair share of like shuffling and like, playing chess with my clients to make sure that they're all feeling the love and they're not feeling like I'm putting them off anything.
Yeah.
Blizzards help. Thank God for blizzards.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like if you don't have something to lean into during the winter, it'll kind of bring you down, like the whole thing will. And I know there's a few artists that you have worked with a lot, or at least on like frequently. Like I actually started getting familiar with your production with Communist Daughter, because I know you worked with them.
I'm so sad they're not a band anymore.
They were. I was just thinking about that time when they were like just dominating the chart show, and it's like they were just like, they created a fever I haven't seen in a long time locally for a local band. It was kind of
they were a perfect band. Johnny is one of the best songwriters. We didn't co-write. He didn't need any help. Co-writing. One of the best songwriters I've ever heard. The vocal thing that he developed with his wife Molly was just shimmering and amazing and beautiful. Every person in the band was quirky and individualistic and cool, yet they gelled perfectly. And we had just a flawless way of making those records. It was just effortless and super, super fun. Plus, I miss Johnny as a person. He's living not just in Alaska, but in like northernmost Alaska.
I saw he moved to the West Coast, but I didn't realize he made the leap all the way up there.
He went to San Diego for a while, which, like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But then I forget the name of the city he's living in. It's hard to pronounce. It's in northwestern Alaska. And he got a gig. I think I have this right. He went to get a degree as an addiction counselor, and then they offered him this as a way to pay off. Degrees are expensive, and I think it's a graduate degree. It's very expensive. You can work it off if you go be an addiction counselor for these Inuits, because their culture is just being devastated by addiction. But you got to move to Alaska for a certain period of time. And not only did he do it, but he loves it, and of course he's really, really good at it. And the other thing that just happened is, I think they were having trouble. They wanted to have kids, and they're having trouble, so they adopted. And then, like this happens with people, the minute they adopted, then she got pregnant.
Whoa!
And I don't know if they actually adopted this other kid, or if they're just taking care of him, fostering or whatever.
Right.
But I do know that Molly just had a very, very, very cute baby. And I don't know that I know anyone on the planet more suited for motherhood than Molly Solomon, because she is just very maternal and just awesome. So
they're such nice people too.
They really are.
I know they were doing duo shows, and I was about to ask, like, if they were working on something as a duo, but clearly it sounds like they have their hands full with life at the moment.
But I would drop everything to go work with them again. Not saying I would fly to where they live to work with them. That might be the straw too far. But I can't tell you how much I enjoyed those records, and what a joy it was working with them.
Oh yeah, I'll bet. And so you have also worked with like Westerberg a few. Well, have you worked with him a few times, or because I know you played guitar?
Yeah, I always end up forgetting, and then I go back.
So it's like, it's like, is that a relationship because you came up in this scene that you feel like has always kind of just like, well, yeah, there was always some sort of thing in the background, you know,
Um,
like with that
well,
collaboration?
I knew him, we were in his, like his band actually opened for my band, and then they started
Yeah,
taking off, of course, and then we would open for them. And then
right.
we weren't even good enough to open for them. But I mean, the Replacements were just, in my mind, the best band in the world back then.
Yeah,
Um, and so we were friends, but not close, but we would
right,
talk about songwriting and stuff like that, and he would give me advice. And
right.
he was the first person I ever glommed onto, where it's like, I think I like this guy's music because of the songwriting. I'd never really thought about songwriting before, but
Right,
I
right.
just wanted to be a guitar player. I didn't sing or anything like that. So then we'd run into each other every once in a while in the 80s. And then
Yeah.
I don't know how I remember what happened. He lives in this one neighborhood in South Minneapolis, and me and my wife moved into the neighborhood a few blocks away from his house. And someone, I think it was Michael Bland, said, "You should say hi," because Michael's an old friend of mine too. I've known him since he
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
14. So I wrote this letter to Paul saying, because at that point I was an established songwriter and I'd already
Yeah,
written, like platinums for Johnny Lang and Kenny Wayne Shepherd and the stuff for Etta James and things like that. So I wrote him this letter saying how much of I appreciated his example in songwriting, that I
yeah.
basically was making a living now on things that I'd learned from him.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah.
and told him I'd moved into the neighborhood and stuff like that. And he wrote me right back and said, "Let's get together." So we started hanging out again. And then when he did this tour in 2007 or whatever that was, Paul Westerberg and his Only Friends, he called me to play guitar on it.
Nice.
And it was
Yeah,
me, him, Bland, and Jim Boquist. And we
yeah.
did 2 months out in the around the country. And then I engineered this soundtrack album he did for this Sony animated feature film called Open Season.
Okay.
I did that in my studio. And then a while after that, they did that kind of quote unquote Replacements reunion.
Right, right, right.
Um, and so he got a hold of me and my drummer, Peter Anderson, my buddy. And we went in there and we were like, the replacements for the people that
Replacement,
either were,
replacement. Yeah.
you know, dead or half dead or didn't want to be in it anymore. Um, I always say that's how I get all my good gigs, is like, oh, the person we want is dead.
Yeah.
We'll get Kevin.
Who died and let
Yeah, exactly.
he gave me
Exactly.
this gig.
So we
Yeah.
did that Songs for Slim thing.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then after that, Paul and Tommy came into my studio with Peter, and they cut what was going to be a real, like, original music, new Replacements thing. And we did 3 songs, but nothing ever came of it. One of them was really good, one of them was okay, and one of them was pretty dumb. But then, and I remember I mixed them, and then I got together with Paul, and he hugged me and stuck his tongue in my ear and said, something like, "You're the only one who gets me," or something really over the top
Right,
like that. And then the
right.
next day, his manager called me and said, "Yeah, Paul's not going to put it out because him and Tommy are fighting," or some garbage like that. And I was just like, "Oh, great." I finally got a chance to to produce the Replacements or engineer them or whatever you want to call it and mix it. And now it's not
And
going to
then
come
this
out.
happens. And this happens. I get I mean, it's like that weird adage of just like it really only happens when it doesn't matter. But
Totally.
you could kind of say that about the Replacements' whole career. Like they
Oh,
were that band that was just like, oh, this band could be big, and then they got big. It's like this band could be one of the biggest bands. It's like there's always like that thing.
hey man, they did it to themselves. They the band. The guy has perfect aim, but only at his
Yeah,
own foot. You know, and if you read that brilliant biography that Bob Mayer wrote of the Replacements, he interviewed me for it, and it really, I always
well,
make the same joke that, I spent the first half of my life wishing I was in that band because I really was a big fan, and the second half of my life thanking God for not granting me that stupid juvenile misguided wish. Because if you read that book, these are some sadistic people.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
I can't hang with that. I don't have the, I'm not made of that. I mean, the level of meanness and just, and violence and just horribleness to each other. I can't do that. I like to listen to the music, but you know, that touring America with him was tough enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
Plus, there's the
So
other thing, and this sounds like a stupid, like a very spoiled thing to say, but I noticed we'd been out on the road for a couple of weeks, and these are my favorite songs anyone's ever written. We're playing
right.
Aiken to Be, we're playing IOU, we're playing everything like that. And I look at the set list one night and I catch myself thinking, you know, but we just played these songs last night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
when I
Yeah. Yeah.
realized this is why I'm a studio guy.
Yeah.
My favorite moment is in the studio is like, that song is done. I will probably never listen to it again, maybe in a year, and it's
Yeah.
on to something fresh and new. I
Yeah.
need that kind of variety. Even my favorite songs of all time, I, in a way, got a little bored playing them the same
Right.
songs every night, which is nothing against those songs. It's
No,
me.
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like a David Foster Wallace, like the reality of day in, day out started to settle in, even when you're playing with the replacements.
Yeah, it's because it's playing the same songs. I mean, in the studio, I finish a record and I was like, that's done. I'm like the
Yeah,
surgeon. I take off that scrubs, you throw them on the floor for the interns to pick up, and you move on to the next record. And so it's new people, new songs, new instruments, new style of music. Every day is Halloween. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You're playing
absolutely,
dress up and being a
absolutely.
different person. But if you're in a band or if you're a successful artist, unless you're David Bowie and you can successfully reinvent yourself every other year, then you're stuck. You know what I mean?
Right.
We make Coca-Cola. We can't wake up one day and go, you know what? I just want the cans to be green today. I'm feeling green. No, the cans have to be red and white. Otherwise, it's
Right.
not Coke. And I just bristle against that.
And it makes sense. So if you're just tuning in, we kind of came in through that conversation with I'm talking with Kevin Bowe right now. I'm just kind of talking about what it's like, growing up and wanting to be in a band like the Replacements so bad, and then when you finally work with them, maybe you don't want to be in the Replacements so bad. But follow us off mic. You can hear the full conversation of what we've been talking about and all these stories about working with Westerberg and working with some local favorites as well. At YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook. You can watch the video. If you are one of the folks that likes to play along at home, please don't do so while you're driving. The video gets archived. You can watch it later. So wait till you get home safe and you can do that and listen to that there. If you're just tuning in to Desert Islands, we got about one more pick from the Desert Island Picks list. And we also got some tracks from Simon and Garfunkel and the band queued up. We also have this. Oh, wait, one more. We'll do one more. We'll do one more talk break, and then do music here. Just because I realize we have 11 minutes left, so we might not have time. So if we don't actually have time for the full mixtape, I will also post a link to it, a Spotify link to it underneath this video. Kevin Bowe, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun hanging out and talking
Thank you
with
so
you.
much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So if folks like what they heard with California Sober, where can they hear it again? Where can they get, obviously they can get their hands on some of your handiwork in production, but where can they get their hands on your work specifically?
All my previous CDs are for sale on, if you're that kind of person, which I think there's a couple of them left, on my site. If you go to kevinbowe.com, then there's a link for a Squarespace store. But they're all on Spotify. They're all on iTunes. California Sober. There's a cool video that Jeremy Ilvasacker did for me.
Yeah.
He's so great at everything that he does, and such a fun guy to work with.
Yeah.
Real Renaissance man. And that's on my YouTube channel. So if you Google California Sober Kevin Bowe, you'll find it. And the rest of the record comes out in about 8 weeks.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Stay tuned for the full record in 8 weeks. Next week, I'm going to be speaking with Elore, talking about her new video, her new single, and her hitting the road as well. Up next, we got Democracy Now, so stay tuned for that. But first, we have Elton John, Someone Saved My Life Tonight.
Oh, I love that song. That's the third record. That's the second or third record I ever bought in my life.
This record,
Captain Fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like there's always that moment, because I feel like the first record you buy, I feel like is different because sometimes like you kind of inherit records, or at least for me, I had older brothers, so like they could give me, De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest, and I could unearth relics for myself. And then my parents also had Led Zeppelin and Jackson Browne and the Grateful Dead and stuff I didn't really quite understand. And Steely Dan, we were talking about, stuff that where it's like listening to, it's like, oh yeah, they're kind of a punchline, but you realize it's like the punchline is a meme that people say to fit in. You start listening to those records and you're like, wait, do I actually like Steely Dan? I think I like, I can't make the jokes anymore because I like Steely Dan.
I love all those bands that you just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
And also De La Soul and Tribe. Tribe is probably my favorite hip hop thing of all time.
Yeah.
I just find them irresistible. That guy's voice I could listen to. I don't care, if he's talking about leaving his wallet in El Segundo or something heavy. It doesn't matter. I just love his flow so much.
And just like the beats too, as well. Like just from a production standpoint, they kind of changed the game on a lot of things. Like
it changed mine.
Today, I still don't understand how they got that clear definition on the low end, on like all that stuff. Like, how did they get that to, like, not distort and but not distort in a bad way?
Right.
Like, it's like so saturated in the right way. And
I don't know. I honestly don't know how they did it, but they sure did it great.
What do you think the first record you bought at a store? Because I definitely had. Was it Captain Fantastic or
no? It was the first one was a kind of an obscure Taj Mahal record.
Oh
called,
yeah,
So Good and Blues, and I didn't know anything about it. I literally bought it because I thought the cover looked freaky and cool, and I was only 12.
Yeah.
So here I'm a white Jewish kid
in
Wayzata buying a Taj Mahal record. And it was no drums on that record. It's just solo acoustic.
Yes.
And the Pointer Sisters singing backup vocals, but not slick. It's like, it sounds like field hollers. And I still have the record digitized and everything. And it's still one of my favorite records. I could have put it on my list. The second one was There Goes Ryman Simon.
Yeah.
Which is like, what has that got? Like 5 top 10 singles on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kodachrome, all that stuff. And then the third one was Captain Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm glad that you brought up Taj Mahal, because that was like the first record when my brother saw I discovered the pentatonic scale on guitar. He gave me Muddy Waters and Taj Mahal's self-titled as kind of in that brotherly way of just like, it's cute that you're getting into this, but like, I'm gonna correct the ship before this gets out of hand. You should listen to this before you get too Jimmy Page-ified.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about that Taj record, because like it blew my mind, and the Muddy Waters record of just totally. How hard that goes with no drums.
That's one thing Westerberg and I, of many things we used to lock horns on, is I love Muddy Waters, and he's like, I just don't get it. And I was like,
really?
Yeah, no, it's just like, what's not to get, you moron? Muddy. What do you? Muddy Waters. Yeah. What do you not like? The Muddy or the Waters? What is?
Yeah. Is it? That's interesting. What was?
I know. Isn't that weird?
What was his sticking point about it?
I don't know. I told him Muddy Waters' music is so sexual that he, just from listening to the record, a woman could get pregnant. It's so potent. You know what I mean? That's to me. You know what I mean? It's just so sexual, and in an insinuating way.
Maybe he just didn't grow, because like I feel like in the way modern discourse is about the Beatles, like there's a lot of like people from the older generation kind of getting offended by like how like the younger generations like aren't as impressed with the Beatles as, you know, and it's just like, it's not that the younger generation isn't impressed with the Beatles. They are. It's just the Beatles were like always ever prevalent when they grew up. So to them, like when you say like, oh, the Beatles, it's kind of like, it's kind of like you saying your favorite food is pizza. It's just like, okay, yeah, we get it. Like everyone likes that. Like, what do you?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
like it's like the Beatles aren't just the Beatles. Like the Beatles are like almost like a default choice of music.
Yeah.
You know, like
Or the
it's like
Beatles are, that's
that
music.
there.
That's what music is.
So do you think he's coming at it from a point of just like hearing that, like, oh,
You
like
know, I
this is the
don't know.
touchstone of the blues, and when he
With
finally
Paul,
got
you
it,
never know whether he's saying something for effect.
oh, to be provocative, yeah,
Yeah, and to cause a
yeah,
ruckus, or if he really
yeah,
means it. But he did felt like, I felt like he really meant it on this one. It's not that he doesn't like old blues. He loves a lot of old
oh
blues.
yeah,
I
yeah,
guess Muddy Waters just isn't his thing. You know what I mean? But for me, it's like Muddy and Howlin' Wolf and
oh yeah,
you know, Charlie Patton, Son House, you know,
yeah.
all that stuff is just crazy, crazy cool and magical to me.
Oh yeah, even Link Ray's The Rumble
Totally.
is just like the
How does someone do that?
with yet no words and three just the same 12 bar blues
And it
phrase.
feels more like a rumble than any song
Yeah,
full of lyrics about a rumble would be. You know what I mean?
it's pure attitude, and the
Yeah.
fact that you can squeeze that in just the way you play it. It's like it's one of my songs I like. Every one of my guitar students eventually learns that song because I think it's like a rite of passage. Like,
Yeah. The restraint and the power of it, the discipline of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's so cool.
it's and you can just teach a lifelong class with that song because like one, you start off that song just getting the motor skills. It's good to kind of like get your chord changes because that's a plateau that's already kind of frustrating to get over when you first start out on an instrument. But after you think you've like kind of gotten a handle on it, maybe you think you've mastered the instrument, going back and the subtleties of just like, it's not that he's hitting it directly on the one to get that feel. It's like the affectation and how lightly he's holding the pick to get the guitar to break through the amp that way. Like the way he's attacking the guitar is
And
why.
none of it contrived or thought of. He just kind of like
No,
figured it out with his body as he did it. You
yeah,
know what
they
I
were
mean?
just all feel.
He wasn't
And
on YouTube looking at tutorials to do it.
yeah,
He
no,
just,
no,
it's almost like just an extension of who he must have been as a person, I'm guessing. It
yeah.
sounds like that.
And it's just like that's just kind of how it needed to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, it's kind of how it needs to be done always, but like back then you really had no choice. Like the tape was just rolling,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
just like that's kind of, you get what you get. Speaking of that, getting what you get, we have 90 seconds until Democracy Now! And I want to make sure I get that program on the air on time, just because it looks like we're going to have to fade out the band here.
Democracy is important.
It is. It is. It's an important show. It's every time I do this show and feel like, oh, it's like, you know, you feel you think like you did a lot of work. You listen to that show and you're like, okay, yeah, that's me, not so much.
Right.
But yeah, It Makes No Difference is actually kind of quite a long song, so I'm gonna have to fade it out here. But I think we're gonna have to shut this whole chat down. But Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. I had a lot of fun, and
Me too.
I know how much it takes to just kind of take any time out of your morning to do these. So I really appreciate you stopping
It's a
by.
snow day. This was great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, enjoy the snow. Stay safe out there because it doesn't look. I feel like I'm getting in ahead of it, but apparently, I don't know. Apparently, this is
3
going to be.
o'clock. We're all
Yeah.
going to be screwed. So,
All right. Well, until then, have a healthy 3 hours.
all right. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon.